6 months after the battle where the Keth homeworld had once existed, President Minji walked through the crystal gardens of New Keth. The memorial world had been carefully constructed in the same star system where the original Keth civilization had flourished before the Malthari destroyed it. The gardens were beautiful beyond description. Living crystal formations grew from carefully maintained ocean floors, reaching toward artificial suns that provided the exact spectrum of light the Keth had evolved under. In the deeper pools, the few surviving Keth swam gracefully between coral sculptures that sang with underwater harmonies. "How many survivors did we find?" President Minji asked Dr. Soo-hyun, who walked beside her through the memorial gardens. 47 individuals, Dr. Soo-hyun replied, hidden in deep ocean trenches when the Malthari sterilization beam struck. They had been living in isolation for months, believing they were the last of their kind in the universe. President Minji watched a group of young Keth playing in the crystal formations, their silver bodies moving through the water with natural grace. It was hard to believe that just months ago these children had been hiding in the dark depths of a ruined world, waiting to die. "They are adapting well to the new environment," Dr. Soo-hyun continued. "The memorial world has the same ocean chemistry and tidal patterns as their original homeworld. In time, their population may recover." "And the other species?" Dr. Soo-hyun's expression grew more somber. "We found survivors of 3 other species the Malthari claimed to have completely exterminated. Small populations hidden in places the orbital bombardments could not reach. They are all being relocated to memorial worlds designed to support their specific needs." They walked past a section dedicated to the Yinth, the species that had created poetry with colored light. Human engineers had built special chambers where surviving Yinth could paint their rainbow stories in the air, preserving their unique art form for future generations. "What about the Malthari themselves?" President Minji asked. Dr. Soo-hyun pointed to a small island visible in the distance. "The ones who surrendered and renounced their government's policies are living there, under supervision. They help maintain the memorial systems and provide testimony for the historical archives. They seem genuinely horrified by what their empire did. The war had lasted exactly 17 days, though calling it a war was probably too generous to the Malthari. It had been more like a systematic dismantling of an empire that had never faced real opposition. Human fleets had appeared throughout Malthari space, striking with precision and overwhelming force at every military installation, every government facility, every symbol of the regime that had made genocide a matter of policy. The Malthari military, designed to terrorize and slaughter defenseless civilian populations, had been completely unprepared for an enemy that fought back with superior technology and absolute determination. Their weapons, built to crack planets and boil atmospheres, were useless against human ships that could bend space-time to avoid detection and turn gravity itself into a weapon. Most Malthari had fought to the bitter end rather than surrender, preferring death to facing justice for their crimes. But some had laid down their weapons and begged for mercy, mercy that humanity granted, though not forgiveness. Captain Dong-hyun supervised the restoration efforts on the 7th liberated world this month. The planet had been a slave colony, where the Malthari forced captured populations from different species to work in industrial facilities that stripped natural resources from the planet's crust. "The Velok are adapting fastest to self-governance," Captain Dong-hyun reported to President Minji during their weekly communication. "They have established a council system based on their traditional agricultural communities. The Zephyrians are having more difficulty. Their species was enslaved for 3 generations and many of them have never experienced freedom. The liberation process was complex and delicate. Some species had been enslaved for so long that they had no memory of how to govern themselves. Others had been scattered across different worlds and needed help reuniting their populations. All of them required medical treatment, psychological support, and assistance in rebuilding their cultures. "We are not giving them orders," Captain Dong-hyun continued. "Human advisors only offer suggestions when specifically asked. Every species has the right to determine their own future, without interference from us or anyone else." This was perhaps the most important principle of humanity's new approach to galactic relations. They had fought to end genocide, not to replace one empire with another. Every liberated world was given complete autonomy to develop according to their own values and traditions. Ambassador Hyon, now serving as Director of Species Relations, spent his days meeting with representatives from newly liberated worlds. His office in the former Malthari capital had been converted into a center for interspecies cooperation, where beings who had been slaves just months ago were learning to be diplomats and leaders once again. The Kalari delegation is requesting assistance with agricultural technology, Hyon reported during his briefing to the Earth Government Council. Their homeworld's ecosystem was damaged during the Malthari occupation, and they need help restoring soil fertility. And the Nexari? President Minji asked. They want to establish a memorial fleet to search for other survivor populations throughout the galaxy. Their ships would carry humanitarian supplies and medical facilities to help any refugees they encounter. It was working. Slowly, carefully, the liberated species were rebuilding their civilizations. Some chose to remain on the worlds where they had been enslaved, transforming them from prison planets into free societies. Others requested transportation back to their ancestral homeworlds, even if those worlds had been damaged by Malthari. Exploitation. The most profound change was in humanity itself. The species that had gone to war to stop genocide had been forever altered by that choice. They still created art, music, and literature, but now their cultural works carried themes of justice, protection, and remembrance that had not existed. Before children on Earth learned the histories of the 17 extinct species alongside their own human heritage. Every school had a memorial garden, where young humans could study the achievements and dreams of civilizations that no longer existed. The lesson was simple but powerful. Intelligent life was precious, and protecting it was worth any sacrifice. Dr. Jiwon had returned to theoretical physics research, but her work now focused on technologies that could protect worlds from orbital bombardment rather than destroy them. Engineer Kyungmin developed cloaking systems for refugee ships and medical facilities rather than weapons of war. The skills developed during the war were being turned toward preservation and healing, but the galaxy had not forgotten what humanity was capable of when pushed beyond all limits. A delegation from the hegemony of Kron arrived at Earth's diplomatic station with a request for alliance. The Kron were a militant species that had been expanding their territory through conquest and subjugation. They had heard about humanity's victory over the Malthari and wanted to propose a partnership for mutual expansion of sphere of influence. The meeting lasted exactly 10 minutes. "We appreciate your interest in diplomatic relations," Ambassador Hyon told the Kron delegation. "However, Earth's position on conquest and subjugation is quite clear. We recommend that you consider peaceful expansion through trade and cultural exchange instead." The Kron ambassador laughed. "You have proven yourselves as warriors, humans. Why waste time with weak species that cannot defend themselves? Together, we could dominate this entire sector of the galaxy." Ambassador Hyon's expression remained politely neutral. "I think there has been a misunderstanding. We did not fight the Malthari to prove ourselves as warriors. We fought them to stop genocide. If the hegemony of Kron is considering similar policies, we would strongly advise against it. And if we choose to expand our territory regardless of your advice?" Ambassador Hyon smiled, a gentle diplomatic expression that somehow carried the weight of gravitational weapons and stellar-scale engineering capabilities. "Then you would discover that our war against the Malthari was not about conquest or expansion. It was about justice. And justice, unlike conquest, has no borders." The Kron delegation left without signing any treaties. Word spread throughout the galaxy. Humanity was not interested in empire building or territorial expansion. They seemed content to remain in their small corner of space, helping liberated species rebuild their civilizations. But they also remembered everything, forgave nothing when it came to genocide, and were perfectly willing to cross any distance to stop the systematic murder of intelligent beings. A new galactic order was emerging, based not on the dominance of the strong over the weak, but on the protection of all intelligent life against those who would destroy it. Species that had lived in fear for centuries began to breathe freely. Worlds that had expected conquest found offers of friendship instead. But in the deepest archives of human space, Admiral Yan He maintained the memorial fleet, ships designed for one purpose only: If any species, anywhere in the galaxy, decided that genocide was acceptable policy, they would discover that humanity had not forgotten how to stop being cultured. The children of 17 extinct civilizations. High Counselor Vrex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inevitable Victory, surrounded by the largest battle fleet in Malthari history. 300 warships hung in the darkness of space, their weapons charged and ready. The most advanced, military force in the galaxy was finally going to crush the mysterious enemy that had been striking at them for months. It had taken the Malthari Intelligence Service 6 months to trace the attacks back to their source. The breakthrough came when they captured one of the human memorial plaques and analyzed its quantum signature. The trail led them to a small primitive species from a system they barely remembered, the ones who had sent an ambassador to discuss trade relations. Earth, Vrex said with disgust. Those pathetic creatures who offered us poetry and music. I should have sterilized their world immediately instead of wasting time on diplomatic formalities. General Threx activated the tactical display. Our intelligence indicates the humans have developed stealth technology and advanced weapons, but they are still massively outnumbered. This fleet alone could destroy their entire civilization. Vrex nodded with satisfaction. The rendezvous point was in the empty space where the Keth homeworld had once existed, a fitting location to remind these humans of their own fate. When they arrive for negotiations, we will demonstrate proper Malthari efficiency, Vrex declared. Their species will be optimized within the hour, and this annoying resistance will finally end. But when the Malthari fleet reached the coordinates, they found only a single small ship waiting in the void. It was sleek and black, barely the size of a Malthari patrol vessel. No visible weapons, no escort, no defensive systems. One ship? General Threx frowned at his sensors. Our intelligence suggested they had developed significant military capabilities. Perhaps they realized the hopelessness of their situation, Vrex mused. They are probably here to surrender. The small human ship opened a communication channel. A human female appeared on the screen, wearing a simple uniform with no decorations or rank insignia. She looked calm, almost peaceful. I am Admiral Yeonhee, of the Earth Defense Force, she said. You requested this meeting, High Counselor Vrex. Vrex leaned forward in his command chair. Indeed, we have traced your recent acts of terrorism back to your species. You have been conducting unprovoked attacks against Malthari civilian installations. Admiral Yeonhee's expression did not change. Civilian installations? You mean the supply lines that supported genocide operations? The research stations developing more efficient extermination methods? The communication relays coordinating planetary sterilizations? Administrative facilities, Vrex corrected dismissively. Part of normal Imperial operations, but this conversation is pointless. You will surrender your fleet immediately and submit to biological optimization. Your resistance has been noted and will be factored into the sterilization procedures. Our resistance, Admiral Yeonhee repeated quietly. She looked out through the view screen at the massive Malthari fleet surrounding her tiny ship. High Counselor, do you know why we chose this location for our meeting? Vrex gestured impatiently. Some primitive symbolic gesture, I assume. This is where the Keth homeworld used to be, Admiral Yeonhee said, where millions of innocent beings lived and dreamed and created beauty, where children played in crystal gardens and artists grew living sculptures from coral. Her voice remained calm, but something in her tone made General Threx check his tactical sensors nervously. You burned it all, Admiral Yeonhee continued. Every child, every artist, every dreamer. You killed them and called it efficiency. And then you invited us to join your civilization. Vrex was becoming annoyed with this pointless conversation. Your emotional attachment to extinct species is noted. However, this changes nothing about your current situation. Surrender now, and we will grant you swift optimization rather than the prolonged suffering we usually apply to resistant populations. Admiral Yeonhee was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made the bridge of the Malthari flagship fall silent. For 18 months, we tried to find a civilized solution to your barbarism. We composed diplomatic notes about your crimes against sentient life. We crafted elegant proposals for peaceful coexistence. We searched through every treaty, every precedent, every legal framework we had ever developed. She looked directly into the camera, and her eyes were like stars burning in the void. But you mistake our culture for weakness. General Threx was staring at his sensor displays in confusion. Sir, I am detecting gravitational anomalies throughout the fleet formation. Massive distortions that should not be possible. Admiral Yanhi continued speaking as if she had not heard him. We are done being diplomatic. We are done being cultured. We are done pretending that creatures like you can be reasoned with. The gravitational distortions were intensifying. Threx looked at his tactical display and felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fear. You wanted to see what a species looks like when it reaches our level of development? Admiral Yanhi's voice echoed across every communication channel in Malthari space, transmitted simultaneously to every ship, every station, every world in their empire. The space around them began to shimmer and twist as hundreds of human warships decloaked. They had been hiding in the gravitational shadows of nearby asteroids, using the space-time distortions to mask their approach. The Malthari fleet was completely surrounded, but these were not the graceful exploration vessels that Earth had originally built for peaceful contact. These ships looked like predators born in the deep vacuum between stars. Their hulls were black as the void itself, covered in weapon systems that bent reality around them. They moved with the fluid precision of hunting pack animals. Now you get to find out, Admiral Yanhi finished. The human fleet opened fire. Threx had never seen weapons like these. Gravitational torpedoes that used a ship's own mass to crush it from within. Energy beams that ignored shields by attacking the quantum structure of matter itself. Missile swarms that could navigate through folded space-time to strike targets. From impossible angles, the Malthari ships designed for overwhelming weaker species were helpless against an enemy that fought with weapons they had never imagined. Their formation tactics, perfected over centuries of genocide, became death traps when human gravity weapons turned their own ships against each other. All vessels, evasive maneuvers, General Threx screamed into his communication system. Scatter, formation, emergency jump to hyperspace. But the human ships had anticipated every move. As Malthari vessels tried to flee, they found their escape routes blocked by cloaked human interceptors. As they tried to regroup, gravity wells prevented them from achieving the formations their tactics required. Impossible, Threx whispered, watching his mighty fleet being torn apart by an enemy he had dismissed as primitive. They are barely out of their home system. How can they have such technology? On her small command ship, Admiral Yunhee watched the battle with grim satisfaction. Around her, the communication systems carried desperate transmissions from dying Malthari ships. Unknown vessels, this is Captain Cranks of the Malthari Third Fleet. We are prepared to discuss terms of surrender. Negative, Admiral Yunhee responded. You do not surrender to the species you plan to exterminate. You face justice. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it ended, the space where the Keth homeworld had once existed was filled with drifting wreckage and expanding clouds of vaporized metal. Of the 300 Malthari warships that had arrived to crush humanity, none remained intact. Admiral Yanhee's ship moved slowly through the debris field. Her sensors detected a few escape pods containing survivors from the destroyed fleet. Standard military doctrine would have required rescuing them. Instead, she activated her ship's external speakers and transmitted on all frequencies. This is Admiral Yanhee of Earth. To any surviving Malthari forces receiving this message, you have just witnessed what happens when a civilized species decides to stop being civilized. She paused, looking out at the wreckage floating in the place where an entire world had once teemed with life. For centuries, you have treated genocide as administrative policy. You have murdered 17 intelligent species and billions of individual beings. You have mistaken mercy for weakness and culture for vulnerability. The transmission reached every corner of Malthari space, broadcast by relay stations that human infiltration teams had captured weeks earlier. Effective immediately, the Malthari Empire is at war with humanity. Not for territory, not for resources, not for conquest, but for justice. Every world you have sterilized, Every species you have exterminated, every child you have murdered in the name of efficiency, we remember. Admiral Yan He's voice carried the weight of 17 dead civilizations and the fury of a species that had finally abandoned all restraint. We are no longer the cultured, diplomatic beings who offered you poetry and music. We are something else now. Something you created when you showed us the recordings of children dying in boiling seas. The transmission ended with a simple message that appeared simultaneously on every communication device in Malthari space. Remember the Keth. Remember them all. And pray to whatever gods you believe in that you never face us again. In the silence that followed, the Malthari supply convoy was exactly where the intelligence report said it would be. Commander Jihoon watched through his ship's sensors as 12 massive cargo vessels moved through the void, carrying food and equipment to outer colonies. Their escort consisted of 6 patrol ships, more than enough to handle pirates or rebels, but they were not dealing with pirates. Cloaking field at maximum efficiency, Pilot Yoongi reported. Enemy sensors show no detection. Commander Jihoon's ship, the Silent Vengeance, was completely invisible. The Malthari convoy passed within 1,000 kilometers without knowing death was watching them. The human vessel drew power directly from the nearest star, its gravitational cloak bending space-time to hide its presence. Target the command vessel first, Commander Jihoon ordered. Then the escorts. Leave the supply ships for last. I want them to see what happens to their protectors. The gravitational torpedo fired without any visible flash or energy signature. Space itself warped around the Malthari command ship, and for a brief moment the vessel's own mass became its enemy. The ship collapsed inward, crushed by forces that no shield could stop. What was that? Came frantic transmissions from the remaining Malthari ships. Where did the attack come from? They never found out. 5 more gravitational torpedoes eliminated the escort vessels in minutes. The supply ships, now defenseless, tried to scatter and run. Commander Jihoon did not destroy them. Instead, his ship transmitted a simple message on all frequencies. Remember the Keth. The supply ships fled in terror, carrying word of an enemy that struck from nowhere and disappeared like ghosts. It was exactly what Commander Jihoon wanted. Across Malthari space, similar attacks were happening every day. Patrol fleets vanished, without sending distress signals. Communication relays went dark for no apparent reason. Mining stations reported equipment failures that made no engineering sense. The Malthari military command initially dismissed these incidents as routine problems. In maintaining a vast interstellar empire, equipment failed sometimes. Ships had accidents. Space was dangerous even for advanced civilizations, but the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. On the Malthari capital world, High Counselor Vrex reviewed the incident reports with growing confusion. In the past month, they had lost contact with 37 different installations. Supply convoys were arriving late or not at all. Outer colonies were reporting strange malfunctions in critical systems. Could this be some kind of coordinated rebellion? Vrex asked his military advisor, General Threx. From which species? General Threx replied. We have been very thorough in our biological optimization programs. There are no surviving populations large enough to mount this kind of operation. Then what is causing these disruptions? General Threx displayed a holographic map showing the locations of all recent incidents. The attacks show signs of advanced technology, stealth capabilities, beyond anything in our database, weapons that can destroy our ships without leaving debris. Vrex studied the map. The attacks were random, scattered across dozens of star systems with no apparent pattern. Pirates with stolen technology? No pirate organization has resources like this, and there are no demands, no territorial claims, no political messages. Just attacks and disappearances. What General Threx did not know was that the attacks did have a pattern. Commander Jihoon and his fellow human raiders were deliberately targeting the infrastructure that supported the Malthari's genocide operations. Supply lines for military fleets, communication networks that coordinated planetary sterilizations, research stations that developed more efficient extermination methods. Every target was chosen carefully by intelligence teams, led by former diplomat Seonho. They had spent months studying Malthari society, mapping their weaknesses, finding the pressure points that would cause maximum disruption, with minimum risk of retaliation against innocent populations. We are not trying to conquer them, Seonho explained to his analysis team. We are trying to cripple their ability to commit genocide while remaining invisible ourselves. Every supply line we cut means fewer resources for their military operations. Every communication relay we destroy means more confusion and slower response times. The strategy was working. Malthari military efficiency was dropping across their entire empire. Fleets were running short on ammunition and supplies. Colonial governors were complaining about delayed reinforcements and equipment shipments, but the humans were also gathering intelligence. Lieutenant Haewon led Strike Team 7 through the ventilation systems of Malthari Research Station Delta 9. The facility was developing new biological weapons designed to make planetary sterilization more efficient. According to intelligence reports, they were close to perfecting a virus that could kill all complex life on a world in just 3 days. Charges placed on the main computer cores. Specialist Taehyung whispered over the comm system. Data download at 90%. Lieutenant Haewon and her team moved like shadows through the alien facility. Months of training in zero-gravity infiltration made them nearly impossible to detect. They had studied the station's layout for weeks, memorizing every corridor, every security checkpoint, every emergency protocol. Movement on level 7, Specialist Hyunjin reported. 2 guards approaching your position. Lieutenant Haewon pressed herself against the wall as 2 Malthari researchers walked past, discussing their latest experiments. They talked casually about killing billions of beings, as if they were planning a garden party. The new strain should be ready for field testing next month, one researcher said. Initial projections suggest complete biosphere sterilization within 72 hours of deployment. Excellent. Which target world has been selected? The Velok homeworld. High Command wants to test the weapon on a heavily populated system before applying it to more valuable territories. Lieutenant Haewon gritted her teeth. The Velok were a peaceful species of farmers and artists, known throughout the galaxy for their beautiful music and agricultural innovations. The Malthari were planning to use them as test subjects for a weapon of mass extinction. Download complete, Specialist Taehyung reported. All data copied, charges ready for detonation. But Lieutenant Haewon had heard enough to change the mission parameters. Belay the demolition, she whispered. We are taking prisoners. Her team moved swiftly and silently. The 2 Malthari researchers never knew what hit them. Within minutes, they were unconscious and secured in portable restraint fields. Lieutenant Haewon's team carried the prisoners to their extraction point, where a cloaked human ship waited in the station's sensor blind spot. They also carried detailed information about the Malthari's next planned genocide. Mission accomplished, Lieutenant Haewon reported to command. Intelligence retrieved and delivered. 2 high-value prisoners secured for interrogation. But before leaving, she placed a Yandori, small memorial plaque where the Malthari would find it. The plaque bore the names of the 17 extinct species, engraved in the crystalline script of the murdered Keth. The message spread through Malthari space like wildfire. Someone was out there, someone who remembered the dead, and they were coming for the killers. The psychological impact was enormous. For the first time in centuries, the Malthari were afraid. They had always been the predators, the ones who decided which species lived or died. Now they were being hunted by an enemy they could not see, could not track, and could not understand. Malthari. Military patrols doubled, then tripled. Research facilities installed additional security systems. Colonial governors demanded more protection for critical installations, but it did no good. Captain Dongyun's squadron struck at the heart of Malthari logistics, destroying a major supply depot that supported their entire eastern fleet. The attack lasted exactly 4 minutes. By the time Malthari reinforcements arrived, the human ships had vanished, leaving only wreckage and another memorial plaque for the extinct species. Engineer Kyungmin led a sabotage team that infiltrated 3 different Malthari shipyards, planting quantum charges that would detonate when the newly built ships tried to activate their faster-than-light drives. The explosions would occur weeks later, when the ships were deployed to operational status, making it impossible to trace the sabotage back to its source. Dr. Jiwan's gravitational weapons proved devastatingly effective against Malthari fleet formations. Their tactical doctrine relied on tight group coordination with overlapping energy shields. When human ships fired gravity torpedoes into these formations, the Malthari ship's own mass turned against them, creating chain reactions that could destroy entire squadrons. "The enemy is using our strengths against us," General Threx reported to the High Council. "Our formation tactics make us vulnerable to their gravitational weapons. Our communication protocols allow them to predict our movements. Our logistics networks give them targets throughout our territory." High Counselor Vrex was no longer dismissive. The attacks were escalating and his empire's military efficiency was dropping every week. "Do we have any identification of this enemy?" "Negative. They strike without warning and vanish without trace. Their technology is unlike anything in our databases. They appear to be fighting a completely different kind of war than anything we have encountered." What the Malthari did not understand was that humans were not. 18 months after the decision, Dr. Jiwan stared at the equations covering the walls of her laboratory. The formulas looked like madness, gravity manipulation theories that violated half of what humanity thought it knew about physics. But the math worked. "Run the simulation again," she told her assistant scientist Bogum. The holographic display activated, showing a small asteroid in space. According to the simulation, Dr. Jiwan's gravitational weapon would compress the asteroid until its own gravity collapsed it into a black hole the size of a marble. The energy release would be equivalent to a stellar explosion. "The power requirements are still enormous," Bogum warned. "We would need to drain the entire power grid of North America just for one shot." "Then we build better power systems," Dr. Jiwan replied simply. "The Malthari can crack planets. We need to be able to do the same, or this is all pointless." Before the Malthari crisis, Dr. Jiwan had been a theoretical physicist, more interested in understanding the universe than weaponizing it. She had spent years writing papers about the ethical implications of dangerous technologies. Now she worked 16 hours a day designing weapons that could kill billions. The change had not come easily. For months after President Minji's declaration of war, Dr. Jiwan had tried to find peaceful applications for her research. But every night, she dreamed of the Keth children playing in their crystal cities, unaware that death was coming from the stars. The door to her laboratory opened. General Sang-hoon entered, followed by Admiral Yeon-hee, the officer now in charge of humanity's new war fleet. "Dr. Jiwan," General Sang-hoon said, "show us what you have." Dr. Jiwan activated the full simulation. The display showed a Malthari battleship, its sleek hull gleaming with energy shields. Then her gravitational weapon fired. The ship's own mass turned against it, crushing inward until nothing remained but a brief flash of annihilation. "How many ships could this destroy at once?" Admiral Yeon-hee asked. "In theory, there is no limit. Gravity affects everything with mass. A single weapon could collapse an entire fleet if they are close enough together." Admiral Yeon-hee smiled grimly. "The Malthari fight in formation. They use overlapping energy shields for maximum protection. Their own tactics will work against them." Across the solar system, other laboratories were making similar breakthroughs. Engineer Kyung-min had unlocked cloaking technology by studying quantum mechanics in ways that Earth's previous peaceful scientists had never dared explore. His stealth systems could hide entire fleets by bending space-time around them. "The energy cost is still high," Kyung-min explained to his team. "But we can power the cloak by siphoning energy from nearby stars. The Malthari will never detect ships that are essentially invisible and powered by their own local suns." In the asteroid belt, Captain Dong-hyun oversaw the construction of humanity's new war fleet. The ships looked nothing like Earth's previous vessels. Gone were the graceful exploration ships with their diplomatic meeting rooms and cultural exchange facilities. These new ships were built for one purpose only: killing. The hull design is based on Earth predator species, ship designer Jun Young explained to Captain Dong-hyun. "Shark-like profiles for maximum speed, wolf pack coordination systems for group tactics, Viper strike weapon deployment for surprise attacks." The ships had no names like Harmony, or Peace, or Discovery. They were called Vengeance and Retribution and Remember the Keth. Their hulls were painted black as space itself, and their weapons were designed to cause maximum psychological impact on any survivors. But the most disturbing changes were happening to the people themselves. Colonel Sunwoo had been a peacekeeping officer before the crisis, trained in conflict resolution and diplomatic protection. Now he ran training camps for Earth's new soldiers, and his methods would have horrified his former self. "Forget everything you learned about civilized warfare," Colonel Sunwoo told his trainees. "The Malthari do not take prisoners. They do not follow treaties. They do not distinguish between soldiers and civilians. They are genocidal monsters, and we will fight them like the animals they are." The training was brutal. Soldiers learned to fight in zero gravity, in toxic atmospheres, in environments that would kill most living things. They practiced boarding actions on enemy ships, sabotage operations on alien worlds, and guerrilla warfare in conditions that no human had ever experienced. "We are not fighting for conquest," Colonel Sunwoo reminded them daily. "We are fighting for the right of intelligent beings to exist. Every Malthari ship we destroy is a world full of children that gets to live. Every alien species we protect is a culture that survives to see tomorrow." The psychological conditioning was as important as the physical training. Earth soldiers watched recordings of the Keth extermination until they could recite the details from memory. They studied the 17 murdered species until each lost civilization felt personal. Dr. Soo-hyun had established the memorial archives, where the cultural achievements of every extinct species were preserved and studied. Every human soldier was required to spend time there, learning about the art, music, philosophy, and dreams that the Malthari had destroyed. The Yinth created poetry that used color as language, Dr. Soo-hyun explained to a group of new recruits. Each hue and shade carried emotional meaning. They could write epic novels in rainbow patterns that told stories across generations. Showed them holographic recordings of Yinth children painting with light itself, creating stories in the air with their hands. The Malthari sterilized their world in 6 hours. Every rainbow poem, every light story, every color song, all gone. The recruits left the memorial archives with hatred burning in their eyes. Meanwhile, former diplomat Seonho worked on infiltration strategies. He had once spent his days crafting beautiful treaty language and designing cultural exchange programs. Now he planned ways to insert human agents into Malthari society, to gather intelligence and sabotage critical systems from within. The Malthari see efficiency as the highest virtue, Seonho explained to his intelligence team. "We can use that against them. Small disruptions in their logistics will cascade into major system failures. They have optimized their empire for maximum efficiency, which makes it extremely vulnerable to targeted chaos." Anthropologist Ji Yeon, who had studied alien cultures with admiration and respect, now catalogued Malthari weaknesses with scientific precision. She identified pressure points in their society, weak links in their command structure, and psychological vulnerabilities that could be exploited. "The Malthari have never faced real resistance," Ji Yeon noted in her reports. "For centuries, every species they encountered either submitted immediately or was exterminated before mounting effective opposition. They have no experience with an enemy that fights back intelligently." As the months passed, humanity's transformation accelerated. Peaceful research stations became weapons laboratories, diplomatic training centers became spy schools, cultural exchange programs became psychological warfare development. The most shocking change was in Earth's children. Schools now taught xenobiology and military history alongside mathematics and literature. Children learned to identify Malthari ship designs, to recognize the signs of orbital bombardment, and to understand the strategic importance of defending other species from genocide. 10-year-old Min Seok could recite the names of all 17 extinct species and explain the tactical mistakes that led to their destruction. 8-year-old Jihi drew pictures of human ships protecting alien worlds, with crayons that spelled out "never again" in a dozen different languages. "We are not raising our children to be warriors," Education Minister Hee-jin explained to concerned parents. "We are raising them to be protectors. There is a difference." But the difference was sometimes hard to see. By the end of 18 months, humanity had become something new. They still wrote poetry and composed music and created art. But now their songs were war ballads, their poems were battle hymns, and their art depicted the glory of defending the innocent against genocide. Admiral Yonhee stood on the bridge of the first completed warship, looking out at the fleet taking shape in the darkness beyond Mars. 100 ships, then 200, then 500, each one packed with weapons that could tear holes in space-time itself. "How long until we are ready?" Captain Donghyun asked. Admiral Yonhee thought of the Keth children playing in crystal gardens. She thought of the 17 extinct civilizations that would never see another sunrise. She thought of Earth's children learning the names of murdered species like prayers. "We have been ready since the day we decided that genocide was unacceptable," she replied. "Now we are just deciding when to stop being civilized and start being something else entirely." In the depths of space, humanity's war fleet grew larger every day, built by a species that had finally learned what they were truly capable of when pushed beyond all limits of patience and mercy. President Minji walked into the emergency session chamber in Geneva with heavy steps. She had not slept in 36 hours, not since the encrypted message from Ambassador Hyon had arrived. The United Earth government had never faced anything like this before. The chamber was packed. Every major world leader sat around the circular table. Defense Minister Taiho looked grim as he reviewed tactical displays. Foreign Minister Yoonji was reading through diplomatic protocols, searching for some way to handle a situation that no protocol had ever imagined. Scientists, military officers, and intelligence analysts filled every available seat. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Minji began, her voice carrying across the silent room. "We are here to discuss Ambassador Hyon's report. I assume you have all reviewed the materials." The materials. Video recordings of an entire species being exterminated, while their killers discussed trade agreements. Technical analyses of weapons that could boil oceans and crack continents. Intelligence estimates that made Earth look like a primitive backwater compared to the Malthari Empire's military might. General Sang-hoon spoke first. "Madam President, the tactical situation is clear. We are outmatched in every category. The Malthari have 500 times our ship count, weapons technology we barely understand, and experience with this kind of operation." He gestured to the holographic display floating over the table. It showed the comparative military strengths of Earth and the Malthari Empire. The numbers were not encouraging. "Their smallest patrol ships could destroy our largest battleships," General Sang-hoon continued. "Their weapons can target planets from outside most star systems. If they decide to do to Earth what they did to the Keth homeworld, we have no way to stop them." Defense Minister Taiho nodded grimly. "Our best computer models give us a 0% chance of military victory in direct confrontation. They could sterilize Earth before our fleets could even reach their territory." The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. "Foreign," Minister Yoonji cleared her throat. "Perhaps we are approaching this wrong. The Malthari invited us into their community. They want to establish trade relations. We could work within their system, gradually influence their policies through diplomatic channels." "Influence their policies?" Dr. Soo-hyun from the Xenobiology Institute stood up, her voice shaking with emotion. "Minister Yoonji, they killed 17 entire species, not 17 million people, 17 species, every man, woman, and child. Every animal, every plant, every microorganism." She activated her personal display showing images from Hyun's recordings. The crystal cities of the Keth, beautiful and peaceful, then the same cities boiling away under energy beams. "These are Keth children," Dr. Soo-hyun said, pointing to graceful young beings playing in coral gardens. "They had schools, families, dreams. The Malthari killed them all and called it efficiency." Her voice broke slightly. "The Keth had art forms we are still trying to understand. They could grow living sculptures that sang in harmonies across entire ocean basins. They had poetry that used water currents as metaphors for emotional states. All of that is gone. Forever." Foreign Minister Yoonji looked uncomfortable. "Dr. Soo-hyun, I understand your emotional response, but we must be practical. If we cannot Defeat them militarily, then diplomacy is our only option. Diplomacy, repeated Intelligence Director Kyung-hee. Minister Yoonji, would you like to review the full recordings of Ambassador Hyun's meeting? The Malthari specifically asked about Earth's biodiversity. They want to help us optimize our biological efficiency. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. President Minji looked around the room. They are planning to do to us what they did to the Keth. The only question is timing. Economic Advisor Minho raised his hand. Perhaps we could offer them something valuable enough to change their minds. Earth has resources they might want to trade for rather than simply take. What could we possibly offer that they cannot take? By force? General Sang-hoon asked. They have the technology to strip mine entire star systems. They can build whatever they need. The debate continued for hours. Diplomatic solutions, economic incentives, hiding strategies, evacuation plans, every option led to the same conclusion. Earth was helpless against an enemy that had perfected the art of genocide. Finally, Dr. Soo-hyun spoke again. She had been quiet for the last hour, staring at the images of the dead Keth children. When, she looked up, her eyes were hard as stone. I have spent my career studying alien life forms, she said. I have dreamed my whole life of meeting other intelligent species, of learning from them, of sharing knowledge and culture across the stars. She gestured to the holographic displays around them. The Malthari have murdered 17 civilizations, 17 chances for humanity to learn, to grow, to become something better. They have stolen the future from billions of innocent beings. Dr. Soo-hyun looked directly at President Minji. I cannot stand the thought of sitting in diplomatic meetings with creatures who burn children alive for efficiency. I cannot pretend to be civilized with beings who treat genocide as administrative policy. The room was completely silent now. What are you suggesting, Dr. Soo-hyun? President Minji asked quietly. I am suggesting that some things are more important than survival. Some things are worth fighting for even when you cannot win. Dr. Soo-hyun's voice grew stronger. If we submit to the Malthari, if we allow them to optimize our biological efficiency, then we become part of their system. We become accessories to their next genocide, and the one after that. She stood up, addressing the entire assembly. Earth has produced warriors before. When faced with evil that could not be negotiated with, could not be reasoned with, could not be appeased, our ancestors fought. They fought knowing they might lose. They fought because some things are worse than death. General Sang-hoon frowned. Dr. Soo-hyun, I appreciate the sentiment, but ancient human warriors did not face enemies who could destroy planets. No, Dr. Soo-hyun agreed. They faced enemies with superior weapons, superior numbers, superior technology, and sometimes they won anyway, because they were fighting for something the enemy could not understand. She activated another display showing Earth from orbit. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents teeming with life. The Malthari see efficiency. We see home. The Malthari see biological resources to be optimized. We see our children playing in gardens, our whales singing in the deep oceans, our forests full of life and wonder. President Minji was quiet for a long moment. Around the table, the leaders of Earth wrestled with an impossible choice. Finally, she spoke. General Sang-hoon, what would we need to have even a chance against the Malthari? Madam President, with respect, there is no chance. The technology gap is too great. Humor me, General. If we were going to try, what would we need? General Sang-hoon sighed. We would need weapons that could penetrate their defenses, ships that could avoid their detection systems. We would need to strike at their infrastructure while protecting our own. We would need to fight a completely different kind of war than anything in human history. How long would it take to develop these capabilities? Assuming we could develop them at all? Years. Maybe decades. And that assumes they do not attack us first. President Minji looked around the room one more time. All in favor of withdrawing Ambassador Hyun immediately and beginning military preparation for defensive war? Every hand in the room went up. All in favor of continuing diplomatic negotiations while preparing for war? No hands. All in favor of full-scale military mobilization with the ultimate goal of stopping Malthari genocide operations permanently. The hands went up more slowly this time, but they all went up. President Minji nodded. Then it is decided. We recall Ambassador Hyun. We sever all contact with the Malthari Empire, and we prepare for war. She looked at the display showing Earth, beautiful and fragile in the darkness of space. For the first time in human history as a unified species, we are going to fight not for territory or resources, but for the right of intelligent beings to exist without fear of genocide. The meeting adjourned in silence. Outside the chamber windows, the sun was setting over Lake Geneva, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It might be one of the last peaceful sunsets Earth would see for a very long time. Ambassador Hyun stood at the window of his quarters aboard the UES Harmony, watching the alien world spin slowly below. 3 purple moons hung in the dark sky like jewels. He had dreamed of this moment his entire life. First contact with an advanced alien civilization. Earth's children were finally joining the galaxy. The Malthari Empire controlled over 200 star systems. Their cities gleamed like crystal gardens across countless worlds. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's best efforts. When they had sent a message to Earth 5 years ago, offering friendship and trade, the entire planet had celebrated. Hyun touched the datapad in his pocket. It contained Earth's gifts to the Malthari, recordings of Mozart and Beatles songs, digital copies of Shakespeare and ancient Korean poetry, mathematical theorems, and artistic masterpieces from every culture on Earth. The best of humanity, ready to share with the stars. The door chimed softly. "Come in," Hyun called. Captain Woo Jin entered, his face grim. "Sir, the Malthari High Council is ready for you. The formal ceremony begins in 1 hour." "Any last-minute briefings?" Hyun asked, straightening his dress uniform. "Just remember the protocols, sir. The Malthari value directness. No flowery language. They see it as weakness." Woo Jin paused. "And sir? They've requested that you witness something they call administrative efficiency. They say it will help you understand how advanced civilizations operate." Hyun nodded. Everything had gone perfectly so far. The Malthari had welcomed them with grand ceremonies and feast halls filled with representatives from dozens of species. This was exactly what Earth had hoped for, a place at the table of galactic civilization. The transport to the planet's surface was smooth and silent. Hyun watched cities flow past through the window. Massive towers reached toward the sky, connected by graceful bridges. Gardens and parks dotted the landscape. It looked like paradise. The High Council chambers were carved from a single crystal formation that rose 300 meters from the ground. Inside, holographic displays showed star charts and trade routes spanning the galaxy. High Counselor Vrex waited at the center, a tall figure with silver skin and 4 arms, wearing robes that shifted color in the light. "Ambassador Hyun of Earth," Vrex said, his voice echoing through translation devices. "Welcome to the center of civilization." "Thank you for this honor," Hyun replied, bowing slightly as his cultural briefings had suggested. "Earth is eager to join the community of worlds. Yes, we have reviewed your species' development. Quite impressive for such a young race. You show promise." Vrex gestured to the displays around them. "But before we proceed with formal relations, you must understand how we maintain order across so many worlds and species." The holographic displays changed. Now they showed a blue-green world covered in vast oceans. Beautiful crystal cities rose from the water like flowers. Graceful beings with silver skin and flowing fins moved through the crystal structures. "The Keth homeworld," Vrex explained casually. "A pleasant enough species. They lived in harmony, with their oceans for thousands of years. Quite artistic, actually. They created sculptures from living coral and composed songs that could travel through water for hundreds of kilometers." Hyun watched the peaceful scenes with interest. "They seem remarkable. Are they part of the Empire?" "Oh yes," Vrex said. "As of last month, their system has been fully incorporated into our territory. Very resource-rich. The minerals in their ocean floors will supply our shipbuilding programs for decades. The display changed again. Hyun's breath caught in his throat. Massive ships hung in orbit around the beautiful world. Beams of energy, brilliant as stars, lanced down from the vessels. Where they touched the crystal cities, everything simply vanished in bursts of superheated steam. The graceful Keth beings were running, trying to reach deeper waters, but there was nowhere to hide. Biological optimization, Vrex explained matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather. The Keth required too many resources relative to their productive output. Ocean worlds are valuable, but not when cluttered with inefficient life forms. Hyun felt his stomach turn but forced his face to remain neutral. Years of diplomatic training kept his voice steady. You killed them all? Sterilization is the most efficient approach, Vrex replied. Partial measures lead to ongoing resistance movements and resource waste. Complete biological clearing allows for proper development of useful species in the ecosystem. The hologram showed the aftermath. The ocean world was empty now, its waters clear but lifeless. Malthari construction ships were already beginning to build new facilities on the seafloor. This process has been refined over centuries, Vrex continued. We have optimized 17 different species planets this way, always with complete success. Hyun's diplomatic mask almost slipped. 17 species, gone, extinct. The other council members agree with these methods? Naturally. This is how civilization advances, Ambassador. Surely Earth understands this principle. You must have done something similar to reach your current development level. The other Malthari council members were nodding in agreement. Around the chamber, representatives from other species, the ones still alive and useful to the Empire, watched with careful, neutral expressions. Your species shows great potential, Vrex went on. Your technology is crude but improving rapidly. Your art forms are interesting, if primitive. With proper guidance, humanity could become quite valuable to the Empire. Hyun managed a diplomatic smile. Earth appreciates the Empire's interest in our development. Excellent. Now shall we begin the formal trade negotiations? We have identified several Earth resources that would be quite useful. Your planet's biodiversity is remarkable. So many species packed onto one world. We could help you optimize that biological efficiency. The words hit Hyun like ice water. He thought of Earth's forests and oceans, of whales singing in the deep Pacific, of children playing in city parks surrounded by trees and flowers. He thought of the Keth children, who would never grow up, who had died screaming in boiling seas while their parents tried desperately to protect them. That is certainly something we would need to discuss carefully with our leadership, Hyun said, his voice steady despite the horror building in his chest. Of course. Take all the time you need. We are very patient. Vrex's forearms spread, in what might have been a welcoming gesture. Perhaps you would like to review our efficiency protocols more thoroughly. We have detailed recordings of all 17 optimization processes, quite educational for a developing species. I would be honored to study your methods, Hyun lied smoothly. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Trade routes, technology exchanges, cultural sharing programs. All of it discussed casually, as if the Malthari hadn't just shown him recordings of genocide. As if they weren't already planning which Earth species to kill first. When it finally ended, Hyun returned to his quarters with his hands shaking. He locked the door, activated every security protocol he knew, and sat down at his communication terminal. His fingers moved quickly across the keys, encoding a message that would take weeks to reach Earth. The encryption was military-grade, hidden, inside routine diplomatic reports. Cultural exchange protocols suspended, he typed. Malthari Empire has committed systematic genocide against 17 species in past century. Keth homeworld sterilized last month. Complete extinction. Empire views biological optimization as standard practice. They are evaluating Earth for similar treatment. He paused, thinking of the purple moons outside his window, of the beautiful, crystal cities built on the bones of murdered civilizations. Recommend immediate reassessment of all contact protocols. This is not first contact. This is a predator evaluating prey. He sent the message and sat back in his chair. Outside, the alien world continued its slow rotation. beautiful and terrible, under its 3 purple moons. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, his message was racing toward Earth, carrying news that would change humanity forever. Hyon closed his eyes and thought of home. Of blue skies and white clouds, of forests filled with birdsong, of oceans where whales still sang their ancient melodies. He thought of children playing in parks, unaware that creatures existed who would kill them all for the sake of efficiency or by the first time in his career, Ambassador Hyon wondered if diplomacy would be enough.